Petero, and welcome to another episode of About Town, where we feature members of our community who are making an impact in Solano County. With us today are three members of Solano Community College and students at early college, high school, and I'm going to allow them to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dean Ramos.
I'm Rimsha Syed.
And I'm Anya Muftic.
Excellent. So Dean, Rimsha, and Anya here to talk about an issue specifically about equity. And equity with regard to celebrating religious holidays in K through 12, but specifically at Fairfield Unified School District. The students approached me about what can we do about considering how we practice our religious holidays here at Fairfield Unified School District. So what we're going to do is, in talking about equity, we'll talk about what exactly these holidays are and how they're celebrated in K through 12, specifically, again, FSUSD. What impact that has on our students, especially you students, and in terms of your education, quality of education, in terms of test taking and the like. And then finally, what solutions as students and as future leaders in our community would you say can be done about how we celebrate religious holidays in Fairfield students? So when you approached me, you talked about two specific holidays. There were Eid al-Fitr and then Eid al-Adha. So tell me a little bit about those. But before we get to that, let's talk about how we celebrate holidays here at FSUSD specifically.
Well, I think you can especially just look at how the calendar is structured to look at what holidays FSUSD prioritizes. Easter falls in spring break, Christmas falls in winter break, the holiday season, as we so call it. And blatantly, there's an unequitable way of celebrating holidays in FSUSD that prioritizes Christian holidays over Islam holidays or Islamic holidays.
And why do you find that problematic when we look at things like maybe the First Amendment in terms of how we celebrate holidays?
Yeah, so the First Amendment does protect our right to the separation of church and state. And we can look at specifically like the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, which both discuss how Congress makes no law respecting an establishment of any church or over any religion over other types of religions. And we see that that's kind of flipped over here in FSUSD, where Christian holidays, as Dean had mentioned, do take priority in the school calendar, which does not equitably allow for students of other religions, such as Islam or any other religion, to follow their holidays or feel comfortable taking time off of school to respect those holidays for them.
And you talk about taking time off school with regard to Easter holidays. Like you said, we don't call it Easter anymore. We call it spring break. We don't call it Christmas holidays. We call it holidays, the holiday season. And everybody gets to take that time off, right? And so, I mean, you talk about if it's equitable, we all get to take that time off. And so with regard to when we're talking about celebrating religious holidays, like you said, the First Amendment prohibits Congress from celebrating just one specifically, either all or none. I would think that would be it, right? But we, like you said, we tend to celebrate the holidays around the Christian religion and not necessarily all the other ones. So these two holidays that you were talking about, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, so Eid al-Fitr is actually the day after the month of Ramadan is finished. So the month of Ramadan, if you guys do not know, is a month of fasting, and it really does depend on how many days. Really, traditionally, people go out to check out the moon to see if they have an additional day of fasting or not. Because the lunar calendar, which is the Islamic calendar, is 10 days less or 10 days shorter than the calendar we use in the U.S. So the U.S. has 365 days in their calendar, and so the lunar calendar would be 10 days less, so it'd be 355. And so after that holy month of fasting, which is Ramadan, where Muslims will fast from sunrise to sunset, no water, no food, so like no consuming anything. That basically, Eid al-Fitr kind of marks the end and kind of celebrates. It's kind of like a cumulative appreciation of like what we've done throughout the month, like spiritually, if you've gotten closer to your faith, or just being grateful for the sustenance that we do have. So it kind of marks it's a celebration of everything that we have accomplished in that month, and it's a period of 3 days. There's 3 days of Eid al-Fitr, and then the second is Eid al-Adha, and that was.
Can you tell what typically happens in those 3 days of El?
Oh yeah, so Eid al-Fitr, I think it's different family to family or like culture to culture, but for me, like we usually have all of our family get together, so we have a family reunion, and we have like basically a huge feast. You have all these great dishes being cooked. Family just come together to appreciate everything they've done this Ramadan, and they get to kind of reflect on it and just have a nice few days of celebrating what they've done and just like reconnecting with people they haven't met in a while.
So if you were to compare that to a U.S. holiday, would that be like the equivalent of like Thanksgiving, where we get together, give thanks, and like what happens, at the end of November, of getting together, just the celebration of getting together, people giving thanks for everything that they've been given. Something
I
similar
would say
to
it
that?
would be similar because there is that aspect of being grateful for having that food and water.
Right.
Because after you fast, you realize, wow, like life's pretty hard without having, without being able to drink
exactly,
or eat.
right?
Even though we
hangry, there's a reason. For that.
Oh
There's
yes,
a word.
yeah, especially, and you realize that once you break your fast, you're like, wow, I really needed that.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's definitely the aspect of where you're like grateful for what you do, and then there's also lots of food. So in those aspects, yes, it is similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is the other one? The other Eid holiday?
Yeah, so the other holiday is Eid al-Adha, which is about 2 months, a little over 2 months, of what we see 2 months after Eid al-Fitr. And looking at like last year's calendar, that was celebrated about the end of June. And Eid al-Adha celebrates most families, again, I think it does depend family to family how you celebrate it. Many families choose to buy, I don't know how you would word it, I would say like an animal.
Yeah, like a goat or a cow or like a lamb.
Yeah, most families do goat, cows, and lambs, where they distribute this animal. It's generally religious sacrifice that they slaughter the animal, and then that animal ends up getting sometimes shared between families, friends, neighbors. Some of it can get, maybe you can donate it to charity or whatever you choose to do with it, but families celebrate during that period as well. That period doesn't have fasting, or generally it's not as large as Ramadan is, but Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr are the two Eids that the most prominent celebrations that Muslims celebrate here and throughout the world.
So, in terms of symbolism, this symbolic nature of that particular holiday itself, I'm not going to ask you what your religious affiliation is, but I think to me it feels like in the Bible, where Abraham was instructed by God to sacrifice his son as a sign of loyalty and belief and whatnot. And so he went up and God said, no, you have done your duty in terms of your loyalty to me and your faith and whatnot. So that's a similar experience that's in the Quran in terms of that's a similar story of Abraham being told to sacrifice his son, and he didn't have to. So in celebration, thankfulness for that, they sacrifice a slaughtered animal to give thanks for that. Is that accurately summarized?
Yeah, I think it does because I know that for me, like, it's basically like the same story from the way like I've been taught with my parents. It's like obviously like the Bible it's Abraham and then in the Quran it's Ibrahim.
Yes.
Like, there's difference in like the minute things, but I think the general overall story and the lesson and the just the idea of faith and like that's all the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in celebrating these religious holidays of Eid al-Fitr,
Yes. Yes.
and Eid
Al-Adha.
What impact does it have on students and how they celebrate that, particularly when they're in school? Because you have holidays like Ramadan that are long, an entire month, and like you were saying, Rimsha, that you don't drink water.
Yeah.
You don't get to eat food, right? You're breathing air. And this is not just when you come to school, right? And when you go home. How much earlier does that start? How does your day start during the months of Ramadan, for example?
Well, for me, I usually will want to pray Isha. It's a prayer. It's like after the sun has set. It's like a while after, and so it's during usually the night. And recent years it's been like around like 10 p.m. and stuff. So I will pray that, and then I will go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But then I will also have to wake up earlier in the morning, 4 a.m., even earlier, because the times do change. Like usually get earlier, like every year. So it ends up being like 3:30 a.m. I have to get up to help out, and just like that's what the rest of my day is. I can't really go back to sleep. So that also shows like the sleep disruption.
Right.
And obviously, like if you're sleeping less, and not during those peak hours, it does affect how you feel at school. Like I would come to school like, tired, and not like my brain would be foggy because.
So if you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're not eating from that time, right? Or do you?
During the time I help make the food with my mom and stuff, but it's around when before like the sun rises, you can eat. So you stop eating once the sun rises. And that usually changes depending on like what time of the year Ramadan is taking place. Yeah, so it's a bit after.
So if it happens in the summer, like in the spring, and then the days are longer, you're
Yeah.
fasting for a longer period of time,
Yes.
right? Now tell me, if that's the case, how does that impact your school day in terms of, being able to be
Functioning.
alert? Like they tell us that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right?
Yes.
So how does that affect?
So actually another thing that I wanted to add, in that morning when we do eat, that meal is called suhoor, which is, I guess, you would be eating breakfast. It would be very early in the morning, but as soon as the sun rises, that is when fasting begins during the month of Ramadan. And after that, students go to school just like they normally would, and they generally, a lot of the time they have to still go through the same exact classes and expectations as any other student who wouldn't be fasting. And it can be very challenging having to deal with being very hungry and not being able to eat for hours, and then also having to maybe they'll be testing in classes or experiencing or having to take their PE class and be physically active,
Right.
running while also not having access to water in that moment or for the next 5 or 6 hours or however much longer they have until sunset. And looking, like, for example, at the last school year, students were expected to fast while also going through state testing, and that would be like what FSUSD, we had CASP, high school students had CASP testing and even math testing that they had to sit through and try their best on, while also kind of juggling fasting and not having access to food for the past several hours, which can be, like I said, kind of challenging when you can't really focus 100% on the work problems that you're trying to do.
Have you had that experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us, like, what happened?
I mean, I do know last year, because it's been the past few years where the CAS testing or the MAP testing has fallen during those times. I do know that if you will go up to faculty and let them know, hey, like I have to fast and stuff, they will be able to accommodate for that. They can be like, we can move around the state. But I feel like it's a whole month thing, and not every student might be comfortable enough or realize they can like go and ask for support, or ask for that time to be ask for a time where they can take the test when they aren't fasting and stuff. So it should be something that the schools provide for them, and let them know that this is here for you. Like just acknowledging that this is a holy month for a lot of students, and acknowledging its importance to this community and recognizing it, and just being aware of, I guess, and appreciating the diversity of our community.
And that's what you're doing here, right? Is giving us information, giving your fellow students information about what the different holidays are, how they're celebrated, and what impact that has on our students, and what resources there are for them, which brings us to, like, what do you think should be done in terms of a solution for celebrating these different holidays and honoring the First Amendment and being able to, do you think in terms of incorporating them into the different holidays we have, like what ideas do you all have? You're on the senior council and everything, like, and I'm sure you all have had discussions about this, like what do you think can be done?
Yeah, I think that since Eid, both Eids move and are out of sync with the U.S. calendar, 365 days versus 355 days. It would make sense for for Eid to have a floating holiday where the day just gets moved around. That students get the day that students get off just gets moved around, and however long that is or wherever it is, the school year is largely unaffected because if you just move that day from, say, one day of winter break or one day of spring break, there's still going to be the same number of holidays, days off, that is, for school, and the school year would stay the same length.
Right. I think we do that for like Cesar Chavez holidays, not always on that day, but they add it to like a day off for, like, say, for example, professional development day or something.
Yeah.
Like that. But then there's also, you have to consider the staff too, because we have members of the staff who also don't celebrate Christian holidays as well.
Exactly.
So it's staff and, faculty, staff and students. So we're looking at that kind of holidays. Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion to consider, a floating holiday. Any other suggestions that you have seen that have been done in other school districts?
Yeah, so we do know that recently the San Francisco Unified School District, they have those holidays being observed within like the school calendar. So I don't know the specifics of how they are doing it, but they have basically put a resolution in to have those observed throughout the school year. So it only makes sense that those would be moving every year, since you can't, it's not just one date. So they would also be floating around, like Dean kind of said. And that would just make sure that you're kind of encompassing them, like encompassing those holidays regardless of where they may fall. And in addition to that, I do know that we have other week-long breaks. Like I think we have one in February. Is it in February called
Like President's Day
President's
weekend?
Week.
President's Week?
Yeah.
That's kind of a week.
Yes.
I'm sure we could find ways to have take a a day off here and a day off here and make it into maybe a week-long thing where you're able to. Because it's around that time too, so it wouldn't seem too inconvenient.
Right.
But of course, that depends on what time Ramadan and Eid all take place that year. But it would seem like a feasible option to do something like that.
And the San Francisco Unified School District, what do? Did they put a resolution together and pass it as their board and then to be incorporated? Is that how they did that?
So they had a student first bring up a petition, and then that was made into a resolution, which was passed by the board, which they are now, I think it is actually on hold right now.
I see.
Yes, but they are also going for that it to be recognized, because even previous examples of the New York, because they are so diverse and they have such a large Muslim population, they were able to do that maybe 7 years ago, I think. And so that's I think SFUSD I think I see a similar thing going on with what New York has been going on. Granted, they're both big cities in the U.S., and I think they're kind of setting that precedent, being an example for other places around the country to show this can happen. And I think they're kind of in a similar position where they're trying to figure it out and kind of sustain what New York has been able to accomplish.
Wonderful. That's a great idea. And so with regard to possibly making it a floating holiday, what about with regard to test times? How do you think that can work?
I think that would definitely need more discussion with between the FSUSD board and then also just staff and what they would also be comfortable with, since I do understand that creating a floating holiday can maybe disrupt what teaching schedules look like. But I think that since we already have so many holidays that are worked around, and we haven't had any problems with like, you know, working around what February break we have now, and then also Easter break and every other Christian holiday, how we have break for those. I wouldn't see how creating like space to have a room during that testing time, or maybe placing one day in that year, if we're saying it maybe a year in advance and saying creating this schedule earlier on, I wouldn't see how that would necessarily have too big of an issue, but that would also take a lot more discussion between different people.
And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Starting this conversation is definitely a first step. And one thing I wanted to bring up, in addition to that, was November 11th, Veterans Day. You know, the 11th month, the 11th day on the 11th month at the 11th hour at the 11th minute, when the armistice for World War II was called. The November 11th was set as the day to celebrate school days off. And even in my memory, I remember that day being like a Thursday. We have November 11th off, and then we go back to school on Friday, and then we have the weekend. And the fact that, you know, FSUSD is willing to celebrate, you know, November 11th, even if it's in the middle of the week, shows me that, you know, there's precedence for it in our district, and even as FSUSD. Not FSUSD, San Francisco Unified School District, when SFUSD found a way to incorporate it. It seems like a non-issue to incorporate this into the school. It seems like a non-issue to find a way to incorporate this into the school calendar.
Excellent. And as students and future leaders, how are you going to go about doing that? What do you think the process might be in your estimation of, now we have to figure out how do we go about doing that, who do we talk to, and what kind of student involvement you will need for that kind of thing. That's all on you, how you go about, you know, deciding what you're going to do to create that. Do you have any ideas as to what your process is going to be?
We do have a rough timeline that we have put together, and that this is basically one of those very first steps, getting ourselves out there, letting people know what we plan to do, like gathering that support that we need. Like we said, in San Francisco Unified School District, they had someone have a petition, and that then they garnered the support in order for it to become a resolution and become passed. So for that, we were thinking of doing something similar and having a proposal written up where we discuss what San Francisco has done. And, you know, since they have already done it, this will be like, you know, they've already figured out a way to do it. So it's just like one step closer to us figuring that out. So with that, we will also have a petition where students and faculty and parents and people around basically around the district, and maybe even later countywide, because if you can do it here, why not, you know, spread to the county as well, where they will get to, you know, show their support and just kind of, I think that is just really important in the educational and awareness aspect. A lot of misconceptions and miseducation could be prevented if you just had like these holidays in the school calendar, because then people would know what it's about. People would be more willing to ask questions and stuff like that. And so with the petition, we're also going to have like the student advisory council and leaders like them across the district at different school sites show their support, spread out the petitions, and then like letters to the editors, public comments. Social media is going to play a huge role into that, just because it's such a like prevalent source of communication in our day and age. And I also know we have like the presentation that we would like to do at the school board in December, around December, where we'd like to have this advisory council propose this to the student board.
Fascinating. You all, this is what I'm talking about, you're future leaders, because you're thinking, I tell people Generation Z is amazing because you're problem solvers. You know, I think, you know, look at what happened, you know, throughout the centuries, what we all have had to go through in terms of equity. You know, for example, there was a time where black people of color, black people didn't have a right to vote. You know, it took until 1924 for American indigenous Indians to have the right to vote, to be declared citizens, you know. It took, you know, an amendment for us women to be able to vote. And so what that meant was people had to have a voice and know that they have a voice, use their voice to make a difference. And you all are making the difference. And I cannot tell you, as a teacher myself, to see how amazing it is to see young people like you taking a stand and knowing that you have a voice and using your voice to affect change. Because what the world looks like in 20 years will be because of you. And I think you're doing such an amazing job, and I want to thank you so much for reaching out to me to bring this platform out and to start by having this show and bring about awareness. And as you said, Rimsha, all of you, Anya and Dean, when we learn about each other, we find that we have so many more things in common than we do different. The problem is we have so much, like you talk about social media, we don't talk enough to each other. We talk at each other, and we talk about each other. But when we talk to each other, we find out that we have so many things in common, like I just said, like the story of Abraham. The story of Abraham, it's the same story, right? We celebrate it in different ways, and we should celebrate all of that. And that's what makes our country exceptional. It's our diversity. And in order to celebrate the diversity, we need to focus on equity. And equity isn't just talked about, equity is done. And I want to thank you all again for sharing your time with us and being, just like I said, future leaders. You're going to early college, high school, and you're going to college, and you're the movers and shakers. You're the future leaders of our country. And I want to thank you all for being here again. And I'm Anya Petero, and I want to thank you all for sharing this time with us on About Town. I'd like to thank Rimsha and Dean and Anya for taking time out of their busy schedules to spend with us. And on that note, have a wonderful afternoon, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend, have a wonderful week. Cheers.